Safe Space Talk. I'm Keisha, the midwife, also known as the Hood Midwife on Instagram. I'm here with my lovely co-host, Miss Renee.
Hello everybody, my name is Renee Harvey. I'm also a certified nurse midwife. I am on Instagram as the Inclusive Midwife. And I am so excited for today's episode. We get to go into some deep history. But before we do that, I am going to start a new little custom of ours. I had a teacher that really inspired me, and she would light a candle every day that someone told her that they had board exams coming up or something significant going on in their life. And that was her way of putting out energy and vibes into the universe for them. So today, we're going to get that started. I'm going to light this. We're going to pray that it works. And light this for anyone who's going through anything that's a little bit extra heavy on their mind, heavy on their spirit, anything. We're going to get that process started. Watch me not be able to get this thing done. Oh, this is that complicated one too. So we're going to light this. So if you're going through anything extra, just know that we are thinking about you. Know that we are lifting you in every way that we can, so that you know that you have an ally out there who is really, really always there for you and thinking about you. I'm not gonna light a darn thing up in here.
There you go.
Look, we finally getting it. Oh girl, this is like a forest fire. We're really there for you.
Let's talk about the difference between midwifery and an obstetrician gynecologist. I get that question asked all the time. I'm mistakenly called doctor, which it doesn't offend me, but I just want people to ensure they know what my scope is and what I'm truly there to help them do, and the difference of what they may see or experience with different providers. So for all my OBs out there, don't feel offended by any of this. We're not knocking you. We definitely love our great collaborative MDs. We're just here to expound a little bit on what we do and how it may be different from what generations in the past have experienced when they went to the doctor, or what they've known what a midwife is. Because the number one question is that like a doula? And no, we're not. So let's delve a little bit into that history. So midwifery versus OB. So according to the American College of Nurse Midwives, who is our governing body and one of our main educational standardized organizations that kind of put our professional opinion out on the map. They also promote and advocate for our profession, which is in every state a little bit different. So the hallmarks of midwifery are recognizing, promoting, and advocating for people going through menarche, pregnancy, birth, and menopause. So menarche, for you guys who are not familiar, is the beginning of having your cycle, your menses, your period, as some people call it. And we also look to promote normalcy and physiologic normalcy within our body functions, which basic physiologic just kind of means normal and how the body's supposed to run. And we learn about those development processes. We promote non-intervention unless it needs to happen. So we are experts on normal. What is normal? What is not normal? And so we try to keep things normal and promote that normalcy, so people aren't medically thinking, oh, I'm so messed up, I'm so sick, I'm so whatever. And let's promote what's still normal about this. You know, yes, you might have XYZ, but what is still normal about this? What can we promote as far as that? And then we, like I said before, are a lot of times promoting and focusing on the physiologic process. So what is your body doing in its natural state? How does it promote and keep itself normal versus pathological, which is, you know, there's a problem. What is pathologically wrong with you? A lot of people hear pathological liar. There's something wrong. So those are the two big differentiations.
I like how you explain that. Pathological liar.
And then Renee's going to tell us more about what an obstetrician and gynecologist does.
So, according to ABOG, OBGYNs are MDs who, by virtue of satisfactory completion of an accredited program of graduate medical education, possess special knowledge, skills, and professional capability in the medical and surgical care of women related to pregnancy and disorders of the female reproductive system. They provide primary and preventative care and serve as consultants to other healthcare professionals. So, for instance, what that essentially means is they are trained, they are heavier trained, they go to school longer than we do, and we are experts on normal, and they absolutely are also experts on normal, but they are much better experts or more thorough experts on the abnormals and the pathological deficits that people may have, and they intervene and they help to fix those issues. So if we have someone that we have to kind of share, like we have a patient that has a lot of things going on, sometimes we have to share that patient with the OBGYN in order to get their opinion on what we can do, what parts we can't do, and they can handle for us, and we kind of share and collaborate with each other. So we'll go from that, and we'll kick it back to Keisha.
Yeah, and I got a little history for us today. So I got this on ourbodiesourselves.org. And this is just a bit of history on midwifery. So it can be traced back to 40,000 BC. You want to say it's probably one of the oldest professions there is.
Aside from prostitution.
Aside from prostitution, which was probably right before, because, well, you know. So there's always been a history of traditionally women helping other women give birth. So that is, and you can see relics that are super old that were shown to us in the beginning of our schooling, and art that always depicts, you know, the midwifery person or whoever is the midwife in that scenario serving the birthing person, so being in a lower position and, you know, having that, which is also pretty interesting because most midwives I know like to sit while they catch a baby versus OBs like to stand. So it kind of feels like they're trying to stand over you a little bit. That's what I felt. And it's not comfortable for me to deliver standing up. I've tried it. I didn't like it.
And so
not a fan.
I guess because I'm so tall, I'm used to standing and crouching. So whenever it's weird. Whenever I birth, I actually squat.
Oh no, I'm sitting like
push effectively.
no,
I am legit like squatting like.
Yeah, no, this is me in the bed.
And me, okay, so I have to be in the bed, or if I'm standing, like the beds just don't go high enough. And I'm just like down there like crouched. But I find whenever I doula and like whenever I'm like just coaching, I'm always down on the floor.
Yes, because we're serving.
I'm serving, so I'm always down on the floor on my knees, coaching and doing all of that. Anyways, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're serving.
But yes, it is servitude, and I love it. That's the best part.
So far, midwifery has been used worldwide over hundreds of thousands of years to aid in the birthing process and even in contraceptions. There was old forms of contraceptions they found from plants, and they had like medicinal and herbal uses. So they were helping women and people way back in the day, even as, you know, before a standardized midwife career was pronounced. Then we also have the history of granny midwives, who were predominantly black women who were the descendants of enslaved people in the South. And that went on from the early to the mid-1900s. They were often the birth attendants for very rural, very poor families, and then, of course, other black families. In 1910, the Flexner Report was published, and it was published as a report of the OB care in America at the time. It basically stated that OB care in America was in bad shape, which it still is today. We have horrible maternity and mortality rates. For the country that's pours the most money into healthcare, we have one of the worst outcomes. But this report individually pushed for births to occur in hospitals and in training facilities. They were actually called training hospitals for new OBGYNs. It also pushed for the abolition of midwifery, so saying that midwives were not competent, were not safe, and they were only utilized for lower class people. So they said they were promoting hospital births as this new chic and posh way to have the baby, which, interestingly enough, 4 years after that report was published, you have the beginning of Twilight Sleep. Twilight Sleep is what was kind of a designer a designer birth process. What would happen is women would come in to have their babies, and they would literally be tied to a bed and sedated to the point where they were no longer aware of what was happening to them, or any pain they may have. They might still be feeling that pain, but they wouldn't remember it, so they would leave the hospital thinking they had a great experience. When in reality, they were strapped to beds in the dark, sometimes bags put over their head, and just left to labor there until the baby came out.
With the morphine and scopolamine cocktail.
Yes, with a heavy drug cocktail. And then all the bonding and things that we see now is promoted was not even remembered by the mom. So that was the interventions that began kind of the trend of more interventions.
And forceps.
Right, so like forceps.
How did the baby come out whenever the mom is not out.
Yeah, so either you're going to find a baby in the bed or you're going to have a heavily intervened birth. Which brings me to my next thing. So a lot of times midwives promote normalcy, like you heard me say before, versus pathology. We want to make sure we are promoting what is normal and keeping it in that bound as much as we possibly can. And then once it gets out of these bounds, then like Renee said, a lot of times we will consult or collaborate with an OBGYN who may be able to do more in-depth surgeries or things that we may not be able to do.
Exactly.
Whereas even some midwives perform C-sections. They're assisting in that. So it really depends on how much you want to build in midwifery and how much you want to be able to do, because we can always get certified in doing certain procedures, whereas inherently some of those procedures are already in the OB scope that they don't have to go specialize into. So going back to the history, Dr. Dilly, he was one of the main players as far as trying to push midwifery out of American births at the time. He also, in the early 1900s, he cited the evils of natural labor as a reason to begin intervening first so we can prevent a lot of the bad outcomes that he didn't want to have. He wanted to prevent the mortality rates and the hemorrhages, so he wanted to intervene first and push that out to the masses, which is very opposite of what we do. We try to individualize our care to where we are only intervening when needed in that certain person. This also led him to say, hey, these new OBs need to be trained, and we're better than train them than poor people. So the poor people who didn't really have a lot of say and didn't have the money or the means to have these posh twilight births were now being sent to training hospitals, charity hospitals, where OBs were able to practice on them to get their experience.
So around 1900, about 50% of births were actually attended with midwives. So we're cruising along doing our thing, half and half. But then around 1935, after the publishing of the reports and a lot of naysaying and things like that, we were down to 15% of births being attended by midwives. And if you can imagine, of course, these were not the posh people. These were those poor people that actually were still utilizing midwifery births. However, the irony to me in this part is between the years of 1915 and 1929, there was an increase by 41% of infant mortality, which is horrible and huge.
That was all in like a 14-year
literally
span.
A 14-year span. We had an increase in 41% of infant deaths. So, but that was due to the interference of midwifery care. So that led to circa 1925-ish. We're looking at Mary Breckenridge, who started the Frontier Nursing Service, which eventually landed into our alma mater, which I'm going to kick us back to Keisha to go over the history with that.
So, like Renee said, in 1925, Mrs. Mary Breckenridge founded the Frontier Nursing Service in rural Kentucky. It has since been learned that she was a stark eugenicist, so she was very promoting of having a typical gene pool with, the white skin and not any kind of ethnicity into that. So unfortunately, she was the founder of the Frontier Nursing Service, but within her scope, she attempted to serve her population there. The FNS provided care to the rural and underserved people in that community and eventually became what's now known as Frontier Nursing University. It's one of the most well-respected and one of the oldest midwifery schools in the country, which we both happen to be alumni of.
And if I'm not mistaken, just to kick in, I remember one of the last classes that we had, 40% of American midwives were educated from Frontier Nursing University. Whoop, whoop. We're in the 40%.
Actually, my provider today was a Frontier alumni, and I walked in her office and was like, oh,
cool. Makes sense.
We're out there.
The 40%.
And so then I'm going to bring it back to you, Renee.
Awesome. So then now we're back. So we went to the 1925s. Now we're at 1950s. So that's whenever the baby boomers popped up. And that's whenever we realized that we needed more midwifery attendants. So we actually started having more midwives attend births, not just at home, but in the U.S. hospitals. So that's whenever that surge kind of came around. So that was kind of going really well. We were creeping on up there. We're doing our thing. So around 1970s, there was a big social change. And they were like, boy, these midwives are where it's at. Look at this. And they come to the hospitals too. Let's all go together. So there was a social change, and we increased our midwifery usage. And after that, about 95% of midwifery births were actually in hospital. So you actually have more midwives doing births in hospitals now than you do actually doing births at home. And then going from there, because we do have midwives, we do have midwives that birth at home, we have midwives that birth in birthing centers, and we have midwives that birth in hospitals. So there are multiple types of midwifery, or multiple types of midwives and midwifery services. So what we're going to do is, that's going to be a totally different video because we don't want to overload you. But we're going to go into the difference. There's a certified professional midwife, there's a certified nurse midwife, and then there's certified midwives. So we can actually go over the 3 different types of those so that you actually know whenever you see the name and you see the credentials behind them, which I don't think we have ours up. But we both are certified nurse midwives, and we'll go into what the difference is between the rest of those. So that is the history of how we got here and how our profession basically was created and discovered.
And hopefully in the future, other states will follow suit with what North Carolina just did. Recently passed a law allowing midwives, or certified nurse midwives, to practice autonomously without the need for a MD to sign on your license. So that is a huge step forward for us in this state, and hopefully other states will follow along suit. Unfortunately, the states with the worst mortality rates also are the ones with the least use of midwifery care. So we are trying to push out our benefits to the masses so they understand, they're less scared, and they're open to asking us questions. Like I said, it's not a fight as to who is better or who does what. We are totally different types in practice specialties, just caring for the same patient population, and you can co-collaborate, absolutely. So
it's actually it's like we both have our end goal: healthy parents, healthy babies, healthy units, a family. But it's kind of like your hype friend and your chillax friend.
Yep. We're going about it in different ways. We're trying to get the same
goal.
Yes.
But different ways of getting there.
Yeah. But other than that, if you liked our video, subscribe to our channel and follow us on Instagram, and we will be putting out much more content for our viewers, and hopefully getting this up and rolling to get content to the people.
And more than anything, don't forget, you can ask questions, send in questions, because we will be reading them so that we can go over questions. I want you to ask those questions that when you go to the doctor, you're like, man, I really want to kind of bring this up. I don't want her to look at me funny whenever I leave. So type those questions in anonymously. They can do it anonymously on YouTube, right?
Yeah, probably. Or
to be sure, there's some.
Even if it's not anonymous to us, it will be anonymous to the masses. So send your questions in.
Exactly.
We are very good HIPAA.
HIPAA.
We are great HIPAA providers, so we will not put any of your business out there, promise. And you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, guys. We'll talk to you later.